Hey guys, this is miicrow here. I just finished leveling up this artifact and wanted to go through my top artifacts for Season 10, or at least the ones that are the most improved that you may want to consider running. My first one is Justice. Justice got a massive buff with the Healing Heart change. Healing Heart is going from a perk that you really did not want to run to a perk that is likely mandatory. Healing Heart is getting buffed to be up to a 30% heal for your max HP, which likely is going to make stone form a lot less required, if not like off meta for most roles. And that alone is a gigantic buff to Justice. The ability to double pot is very strong as well with Justice, so it's a good thing to get you out of a pinch. I still think if you want to go for Endless, it's not a bad option either. Just you're debating like Fortifying Toast versus Healing Heart, or if we have the ability to put Healing Heart on here instead of regenerating, maybe this is the better artifact. But one of the two is going to be really, really good depending on what other perks we can slot in here. The other perk that we really need, though, is we need Refreshment. So Refreshment is a 10% refreshing that is only equipable on Earring. So it's like, I think my ideal Earring would have Healing Heart, would have Refreshment, it would have Fortifying Toast, and then the last slot I'm not as sure of. So it's like, look out for Earring artifacts and see which one of those is viable with that, or try to find something at the open world where you can get all three of those perks, because they seem very, very good next season. My next artifact I wanted to talk about is Unmoved. Unmoved, I think inherently will be really good because there's so many like AoE pull effects, and Unmoved just prevents all pulls from happening to you. This, in combination with some niche recent nerfs to tumblers, I think puts Unmoved in a lot better of a spot to be run. It's not that hard to get. You likely are going to be able to swap the physical. Okay, it's not that hard to get. You get from the PvP track. It's pretty hard to get. But you're going to be able to swap the physical aversion perk most likely. You're going to be able to swap the grip mode most likely, and that alone will elevate Unmoved to kind of a new tier. Assuming these get swapped for defensive slots, I can use any defensive perk that you want. This is going to be like a very, very solid option, and likely will be used in, I think, some forms of PvP. War, I would not be surprised if it gets used if everybody starts taking advantage of the new pull effect from the Enrage set bonus. The other one that I think everybody has been talking about is Old Crown. I'm a little bit less high on Old Crown than other people, but the main thing it does is it gives you extra stats, which is helpful for PvE from an offensive standpoint, and it gives you a lot of extra perk slots, which are good defensively. I do think Featherweight per like it is still effectively tankier than Old Crown. But Old Crown with the additional stat bonuses as well, and with the if food remains at 58 or 48 total stats, and we're at like I think the dev said it was somewhere between 500 and 530. That little bit of extra stats may be enough to push you over to the threshold where Old Crown may make a little bit more sense than Featherweight next season. But both of them should be pretty close. Featherweight, I imagine, refreshing is going to get changed to something else. A physical version likely will be able to swap for something else as well. Both of these, I think, are competitive for the defensive slot, especially after the featherweight nerfs versus before. It was like always run featherweight, and Old Crown was mostly just like a niche PvE artifact. But now I think both can be used for either content. My last two are Inferno and Dorgot's Blade. These are, I think, going to be the PvE kind of staple. Inferno gets a buff from its scaling actually not being bugged, and it has access to probably the best and most consistent base damage increase from Inner Power, where it's increasing your damage by 15% if you're hit with a target that is within 15 meters. That's going to be very consistent to proc in PvE. It's going to be pretty consistent to proc within PvP as well. Just consistent damage increased, very solid. Fire Staff has access to, although it's nerfed, it still has access to some good scaling. I think that from a PvE standpoint, we have the potential to go from like a bleed meta where people were popping all the bleeds that were stacked with Finisher. Because Finisher could only pop your own bleeds and it can't pop your allies, we have the potential to go to like a burn meta instead, where people stack burns and then they pop it with Dorgot's Blade, because Dorgot's Blade got a buff where it gives bonus functionality to consume burns and deal the remaining damage at once, similar to Finish. So it's like if Finish gets removed from the bleed effects, then we just rotate to burns, and then Dorgot's Blade becomes good, is how I'm interpreting it. Don't know that for sure, but it just seems like it's just going to be a solid artifact. I expect it to be paired with weapons that have access to a lot of heavy attacks or kind of quick heavy attack animations. The two that come to mind are Sword and Shield and Greatsword. For both of those, I think this is a good option. And then you just take advantage of the fact that you could extend bleeds to and burns to infinity with a light Sword and Shield bonus from the skill tree, which will extend all debuffs by 5%. You also could use Oblivion to extend debuffs now too, so it's going to be even easier to do it. Maybe we don't even have to run 2 SNSs anymore. Maybe we can get away with 1. But I think both of those will be very strong for PvE. In terms of like, should you upgrade artifacts now or not? I think this is like a pretty common debate. Um, I'm personally holding off on it because if you upgrade it now, I think that like when these get converted to be different artifacts tomorrow, effectively, the perks are gonna change, and I don't know what perk will be the best perk to put on there as the last slot. And because I don't want to have to re-upgrade it to take into account for that perk changing, I'm gonna hold off on upgrading stuff until tomorrow. But I think that's a debate that people are having within the New World community right now. So I don't know if it's best or not to upgrade them, but I wish you all on your journeys to upgrade artifacts in time, or if it's just post Season 10, you probably still have time and you have a better idea of which ones are actually good based off of what the perks change to. And I will catch you guys later. Peace.